Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the stars through the big window. The year was 2847 and something very strange was happening in the galaxy. His computer screen showed red lights everywhere. Each red light meant trouble on a different world. The first empire to fall was the Zephyrian Dominion. They were tall beings made of pure energy who could control lightning and build cities from crystal. For 3,000 years, they ruled 17 star systems. Their ships could fly faster than anything humans had ever built. Their warriors could shoot energy beams from their hands. But 3 days ago, they just stopped. Jake looked at the report on his desk. The Zephyrian homeworld was completely silent. Their crystal cities still glowed with beautiful light, but no one answered when human ships called to them. Scout teams found millions of Zephyrians standing perfectly still in their streets. They were not dead, but they were not alive either. They just stood there like statues made of light. Admiral Lisa Carter walked into the room. She was the boss of all human military ships in this part of space. Her face looked very worried. She carried a thick folder full of papers. "Jake, we have a big problem," she said. "The Vortani Collective went dark 2 hours ago." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Vortani were even more powerful than the Zephyrians. They were a hive mind species that shared thoughts across 43 different worlds. Each Vortani could talk to every other Vortani instantly, no matter how far apart they were. They built ships that grew like plants instead of being made in factories. These bioships could heal themselves and change shape during battle. "All of them?" Jake asked. "Every single world," Lisa said. "Their bioships are floating dead in space. Our teams boarded 3 of them. The crews are gone, but there are no bodies. It is like they just disappeared." Jake sat down hard in his chair. 2 of the greatest empires in the galaxy had fallen in less than a week. These were civilizations that humans still could not match in technology or power. If something could destroy them, what chance did humanity have? The communication system made a beeping sound. A young officer named Danny Lee appeared on the screen. He was stationed at the monitoring post near the Keltharian border. "Admiral Carter," Danny said, "the Keltharian Empire is having major problems. Their AI network is shutting down system by system. Billions of people are trapped on their worlds because all transportation has stopped working." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment. The Keltharians were famous for their artificial intelligence. They had built computer minds so smart that they could solve any problem in seconds. These AI systems ran everything in Keltharian space, from traffic lights to starship engines. If their AI network was failing, the entire empire would collapse. "How long do they have?" Lisa asked. "Maybe 2 days," Danny replied. "Their leaders are sending out emergency calls, but their own communication systems are breaking down. They cannot even talk to their own colonies anymore." Jake stood up and walked to the star map on the wall. Red dots showed where the fallen empires used to be. Yellow dots showed empires that were having problems. Green dots showed places that were still okay. Almost all the dots were red or yellow now. Only a few small areas stayed green. "What about the Nexari Federation?" Jake asked. "Gone," Lisa said. "They lasted 6 hours longer than the Vortani, but the result was the same. Complete collapse with no explanation." Jake stared at the map. The Nexari were traders who connected different parts of the galaxy. They had the fastest ships and knew secret routes through space that other species had never found. If the Nexari could not escape whatever was happening, then nothing could. "Admiral, there is something else," Danny said from the screen. "All the human colonies are reporting normal conditions. Our ships work fine. Our computers work fine. Our people are healthy and happy. Whatever is destroying these empires, it does not seem to affect us." Lisa and Jake looked at each other. This was the strangest part of the whole situation. Humans were still considered a young species by galactic standards. They had only been traveling between stars for about 200 years. Most alien races thought of humans as primitive and weak. Human technology was simple compared to energy beings or hive minds or super-intelligent AI systems. But while ancient empires crumbled around them, humans continued their normal lives. Human children went to school. Human farmers grew food. Human engineers built new machines. Human soldiers protected their worlds. Everything worked exactly as it always had. Dr. Nathan Brooks entered the room carrying a tablet computer. He was Earth's best scientist for studying alien life forms. His hair was messy and his clothes looked like he had not slept for days. "I have been studying the data from all the fallen empires," Nathan said. "I think I found a pattern." "What kind of pattern?" Lisa asked. Nathan touched his tablet and numbers appeared on the main screen. Every empire that fell had reached what I call evolutionary stagnation. The Zephyrians had not changed their society in over 1,000 years. The Vortani hive mind made all individuals think exactly the same way. The Keltharians let their AI systems make every decision for them. Jake studied the numbers. "What does that mean?" "They became too perfect," Nathan explained. "Each species found one way of living that worked very well, and then they never changed from that way. They built perfect societies with no problems and no chaos. But perfection might be a weakness, not a strength." "How can perfection be weak?" Lisa asked. Nathan smiled for the first time in days. "Look at humans. We argue about everything. We make mistakes. We change our minds. We fight with each other, and then make up. We never do anything the same way twice. Other species think this makes us primitive, but maybe it makes us strong." Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, an unknown force was destroying civilizations that had lasted for thousands of years. Ancient empires with incredible technology were falling, like dominoes. Yet humanity, with their simple ships and chaotic nature, seemed to be immune to whatever was causing the destruction. The red lights on his screen continued to blink as more empires went silent across the galaxy. But the green light that marked human space stayed bright and steady. For the first time since this crisis began, Jake allowed himself to hope that maybe being imperfect was exactly what his species needed to survive. Captain Amy Rodriguez walked through the empty streets of Krista Prime and felt like she was in a bad dream. 3 months had passed since the great empires started falling, and her team was the first to land on the Zephyrian homeworld. The crystal. Buildings around her still glowed with soft blue light, but everything was perfectly quiet. Her team of 6 soldiers followed behind her with their weapons ready. They had expected to find bodies or signs of battle, but instead they found something much stranger. Millions of Zephyrians stood motionless throughout the city like glowing statues. Their energy bodies flickered weakly, but they did not move or respond to anything. "Captain, look at this," said Sergeant Tony Mitchell. He was kneeling next to a Zephyrian who had been frozen while reaching for something. "Its eyes are open, but there is nobody home." Amy touched her radio. "Base, this is Rodriguez. The Zephyrians are not dead, but they are not alive either. They seem to be caught between existing and not existing, back on Earth." Dr. Kevin Walsh sat in his small office surrounded by papers written in dozens of alien languages. He was humanity's best expert at understanding how different species communicated. For weeks he had been studying the last messages sent out by each fallen empire. Kevin picked up a page covered in Zephyrian symbols that looked like lightning bolts. Below it was a translation into human words. He had seen the same phrase in every alien language he studied. The Zephyrians called it Shal Neth Kalar, which meant the silence calls in their energy language. The Vortani hive mind had shared the phrase, "Quiet thought comes to end all noise," in their final group communication. The Keltharian AI systems had printed "Error Silence Protocol Activated" on millions of screens before shutting down forever. Even the Nexari traders had carved the Great Quiet approaches into the walls of their ships before abandoning them in space. Kevin stood up and walked to his window that looked out over the busy streets of New Geneva. Human cities were full of noise and movement. People talked and laughed and argued. Cars honked their horns. Music played from open windows. Children ran through parks while dogs barked and birds sang in the trees. But the fallen alien worlds were completely silent now. Engineer Tony Mitchell was aboard the exploration ship Horizon when his sensors detected something impossible. His screen showed massive structures hiding in the dark space between galaxies. These objects were bigger than moons, but they did not give off any light or heat. They seemed to absorb energy from around them, creating holes of perfect darkness. Captain Henderson, you need to see this, Tony called to his commanding officer. Captain, Bill Henderson looked at the sensor readings and whistled softly. How many are there? I count at least 50, Tony replied. Maybe more. They are arranged in a perfect circle around our galaxy. Each one is exactly the same distance from the others. The structures were clearly artificial, but they looked incredibly ancient. Their surfaces were covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When Tony tried to take detailed scans, his equipment started making strange noises and displaying error messages. Dr. Rachel Green was working late in her laboratory on Luna Station when she made the discovery that changed everything. She was a quantum physicist who studied how the smallest parts of matter behaved. Her job was to understand the basic rules that controlled the universe. Rachel had been analyzing energy readings from the fallen empires when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Just before each civilization collapsed, there had been a brief spike in what she called ordering energy across their entire territory. This energy seemed to force everything to become more organized and predictable. Computer, show me the pattern analysis, Rachel said to her AI assistant. Numbers and graphs appeared on her screen. The ordering energy had affected every fallen species in exactly the same way. It made their thoughts more logical. It made their emotions disappear. It made their behavior perfectly predictable. And once they became completely ordered, they stopped being able to think or act at all. Rachel realized she was looking at evidence of an intelligence so vast and ancient that it viewed entire civilizations as temporary experiments. This force had been watching the galaxy for millions of years. When any species became too advanced or too organized, it would send out the ordering energy to make them stop existing. But humans seemed to be invisible to this process. Rachel pulled up data about human brain patterns and compared them to alien species. What she found amazed her. Human thoughts were chaotic and unpredictable even when they were trying to be logical. Human emotions changed constantly. Human behavior was so random that even other humans could not predict what someone might do next. This chaos that other species saw as primitive might actually be humanity's greatest defense. Meanwhile, Captain Amy Rodriguez was exploring deeper into the empty Zephyrian city. Her team found libraries full of crystal tablets that still glowed with information. The final entries all talked about hearing a voice that promised perfect peace and order. Many Zephyrians had written that they were tired of the chaos of individual thoughts and wanted to join something larger and quieter. They chose this, Amy realized. The silence did not force them. It offered them something they thought they wanted. Dr. Kevin Walsh made the same discovery when he translated more of the final messages. Every fallen species had records of their people becoming fascinated with the idea of perfect order. They had grown tired of arguments and conflicts and individual differences. The silence had offered them a way to end all disagreement by ending all individual thought, but humans seemed incapable of wanting such a thing. Even when they tried to agree with each other, they ended up arguing about details. Even when they tried to be perfectly logical, they got distracted by emotions or random thoughts. Human nature itself seemed to reject the kind of perfect order that had destroyed other civilizations. Tony Mitchell detected more of the ancient structures as his ship traveled deeper into unexplored space. Each one was positioned to observe a different part of the galaxy. They had been watching and waiting for millions of years, waiting for species to evolve to the point where they could be offered the gift of perfect silence. Rachel Green worked through the night trying to understand why humans were different. She discovered that human DNA contained more random elements than any other known species. Human brains had evolved to embrace uncertainty rather than avoid it. Human culture celebrated individuals who thought differently rather than punishing them. While other species had evolved toward perfection, humans had evolved toward chaos. This made them unpredictable and difficult to control. It also made them nearly impossible for the ancient watchers to understand or influence. As dawn broke over Earth's cities, the noise of human activity began again. People argued about politics over breakfast. Children played games with rules they made up as they went along. Artists created things that had never existed before. Scientists asked questions that had no clear answers. The galaxy around them grew more silent each day as more empires fell to the perfect peace offered by the ancient watchers. But humanity remained chaotic and loud, and completely unaware that their imperfection might be the key to survival in a universe where perfection meant death. Captain Danny Lee gripped his weapon as the strange ship appeared directly in front of his patrol vessel. 6 months had passed since the first empires fell, and now the unknown force was finally making direct contact with humanity. The alien ship looked like it was made from liquid metal that flowed and shifted constantly. It did not match any design in human databases. Liberty Base. "This is Captain Lee." Danny spoke into his radio. "Unknown vessel has appeared near the Jupiter mining station. It is not responding to our communications." The ship did not fire weapons or make threatening moves. Instead, it began projecting a field of energy that made Danny feel very strange. His thoughts became slower and more organized. His emotions started to fade away. The anger and excitement he normally felt during dangerous situations disappeared completely. "Captain, something is wrong," said his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sophie Clark. Her voice sounded flat and emotionless. "I feel like my personality is being erased." Danny looked around his bridge and saw that his entire crew was changing. Their faces became blank and expressionless. Their movements became perfectly coordinated. They were turning into the same kind of empty beings that had been found on the fallen worlds. But Danny noticed that some crew members were fighting the effect better than others. Engineer Maya Thompson was shaking her head violently and muttering curse words under her breath. Communications Officer Frank Miller was singing an old rock song very loudly. Medical Officer Gary Phillips was telling himself jokes and laughing at his own punchlines. "Everyone start acting crazy," Danny ordered. "Sing songs, tell jokes, get angry about something, fight the order field with chaos." The crew members who were still able to think began following his orders. They shouted random words and made silly faces at each other. They argued about sports and politics and what to have for dinner. The more chaotic they became, the less the alien field affected them. Dr. Susan Blake was working at the Military Medical Center when the first affected crew members arrived. She was a psychiatrist who helped soldiers deal with stress and fear. The patients brought to her showed symptoms unlike anything she had ever seen. "Doctor, the field made me want to stop being me," explained Corporal Ryan Hayes, who had been exposed for only a few minutes. "I could feel my personality dissolving. All my thoughts were becoming the same thought. All my feelings were disappearing." Susan studied brain scans from the affected personnel. The alien influence seemed to target the parts of the brain responsible for individual personality and creative thinking. But she discovered that people with stronger individual traits recovered faster than those who were naturally conformist. "It appears that selfishness and stubbornness are actually protective factors," she wrote in her report. "Patients who are argumentative or difficult to work with show greater resistance to the ordering effect." Susan developed training exercises that she called the Blake Protocol. She taught people to strengthen their individual personalities by embracing their quirks and flaws. Soldiers learned to get angry on command. Engineers learned to think in deliberately illogical ways. Pilots learned to make random decisions that served no purpose except to be unpredictable. Admiral Peter Stone read Susan's reports and realized that humanity was facing more than just an invasion. The ancient intelligence behind the attacks was testing them to see if they deserved to survive. Every human response was being carefully measured and evaluated. They destroyed other civilizations because those species failed some kind of test, Peter explained to his staff. Now they are testing us to see if we are different enough to be allowed to continue existing. The tests became more frequent and more complex. Alien probe ships appeared near human colonies and projected ordering fields of different strengths. Some fields were weak and only caused mild personality changes. Others were strong enough to turn entire crews into empty shells within minutes. But humans developed countermeasures faster than any previous species had managed. They learned to recognize the early signs of ordering field exposure. They created devices that generated random noise to disrupt the alien influence. Most importantly, they learned to use their own chaotic nature as a weapon against the perfect order being imposed on them. Engineer Maya Thompson made a breakthrough while working on humanity's response technology. She was trying to build a device that could protect human ships from the ordering fields when she realized that human technology itself had natural defenses. Our machines are full of imperfections, Maya explained to her team. We build things through trial and error instead of perfect mathematical planning. All these little flaws and inefficiencies make our technology resistant to the alien influence. Maya's discovery led to the development of what humans called chaos generators. These devices deliberately introduced random elements into ship systems, making them impossible for the ancient intelligence to predict or control. A ship with chaos generators might suddenly change course for no reason or fire weapons in completely random directions. Other species would have seen such unpredictable behavior as a serious flaw. But for humans, it became their greatest strategic advantage. Lieutenant Sophie Clark was the pilot chosen to test the first ship equipped with full chaos generator technology. Her fighter craft was small and lightly armed compared to the massive probe ships sent by the ancient intelligence. But when the alien vessel tried to project its ordering field, Sophie's ship responded in ways that confused the enemy completely. Her navigation system sent her flying in spirals and loops that followed no mathematical pattern. Her weapons fired, at random intervals whether there were targets or not. Her communication system broadcast old human music mixed with radio static and poetry, read backwards. The alien probe ship tried to adapt to Sophie's chaotic behavior, but found it impossible to predict what she would do next. When it positioned itself to block her escape route, she flew straight up instead of left or right. When it prepared defenses against her weapons, she stopped shooting and started broadcasting pictures of Earth animals. The confusion was too much for the perfect alien intelligence to handle. The probe ship's systems began making errors as they tried to process behavior that had no logical explanation. Finally, the ship simply exploded as its computational systems overloaded trying to understand human irrationality. Target destroyed, Sophie reported with satisfaction. Looks like being crazy actually works. Dr. Frank Miller studied the wreckage of the alien probe ship and discovered that its technology was based on pure mathematical perfection. Every component was designed according to flawless equations that produced optimal results under predictable conditions. But when faced with truly random variables, the perfect systems became vulnerable instead of strong. Their strength is also their weakness, Frank explained. They cannot adapt to genuine chaos because their entire civilization is built on the idea that perfection is always better than randomness. President Jennifer Adams called an emergency session of the United Colonial Council. Representatives from every human world gathered to discuss their response to the ancient threat. For the first time in their history, humans faced an enemy that could not be defeated through superior technology or military strength. We are not going to hide and hope they leave us alone, Jennifer declared. We are not going to accept their judgment about whether we deserve to exist. We are going to fight back and show them that chaos is not a weakness but a strength. Captain Blake Roberts was chosen to command the largest human fleet ever assembled. His mission was to locate the source of the ancient intelligence and engage them directly. Every ship in his fleet was equipped with chaos generators and crewed by volunteers who had undergone intensive training in maintaining their individual personalities under pressure. As the fleet prepared to depart Earth, the crew members spent their final shore leave doing the most human things they could think of. They argued with their families about trivial matters. They ate foods that were bad for them. They listened to music that was too loud. They fell in love with people who were completely wrong for them. They embraced every flaw and imperfection that made them human because those flaws might be the only things that could save them from a fate worse than death. The fate of becoming perfect. Colonel Ryan Hayes watched his strike team prepare for the most dangerous mission in human history. They were going to attack the ancient intelligence directly instead of just defending against its tests. His soldiers had trained for months to embrace chaos as both shield and weapon against an enemy that had never been defeated. Remember what Dr. Blake taught us, Ryan told his team. When the ordering field hits, you don't fight it with logic. Fight it with madness. Think about embarrassing memories. Sing stupid songs, get angry about things that don't matter, make no sense at all. Lieutenant Sophie Clark climbed into her modified fighter craft feeling both terrified and excited. Her ship looked like it had been built by someone having a mental breakdown. Nothing matched anything else. The weapons were mounted at odd angles. The engine made weird noises. The navigation system was programmed to occasionally fly in the wrong direction, just to confuse enemy targeting computers. Control, this is Chaos 1 requesting permission to launch, Sophie said into her radio. Permission granted, Chaos 1, came the reply. Remember, you are not just a pilot today. You are proof that being imperfect can be perfect. The human fleet jumped into hyperspace heading for the coordinates where the ancient Watchers were believed to be waiting. Admiral Kate Johnson commanded from the flagship Defiance, which was the most chaotically designed vessel ever built by human engineers. Every system on the ship contained deliberate flaws and random elements. Dr. Alex Turner monitored sensor readings from his position on the bridge. He was humanity's leading expert on the ancient technology they would be facing. For months he had studied the wreckage of probe ships, trying to understand how perfect mathematics could be turned into a weakness. Admiral, the enemy structures are massive, Alex reported. Each one is the size of a small moon. They have been observing our galaxy for millions of years, waiting for species to evolve to the point where they could be offered the silence. How many species do you think they have destroyed? Kate asked. Thousands, Alex replied. Maybe millions. We found evidence that they have been culling advanced civilizations since before Earth even had complex life forms. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Watcher territory. What they saw there would have driven most species to despair. The ancient structures stretched across space in perfect mathematical formations. Each building was identical to all the others. The harmony and order was so complete that it hurt human minds just to look at it. This is what perfection looks like, Kate said quietly. And it is the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. The Watchers responded immediately to the human intrusion. Ships began emerging from the ancient structures. These vessels were flawless works of art that moved with mathematical precision. Their weapons could unmake matter at the quantum level. Their defenses existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But the human fleet did not retreat. Instead, they began implementing the most chaotic battle plan ever devised. Ships flew in random directions. Some vessels attacked while others danced. A few captains ordered their crews to sing opera during combat, while their weapons fired to the rhythm of the music. Lieutenant Commander Gary Phillips piloted his destroyer in a pattern based on the movement of drunk butterflies. His gunners had been instructed to shoot at anything that looked too organized. His communication officer broadcast recipes for chocolate cake mixed with tactical reports. The Watcher ships tried to adapt to human tactics but found it impossible. Their perfect computational systems could not process behavior that followed no logical rules. When they moved to intercept a human ship, it would suddenly stop moving and start spinning in place. When they prepared for conventional weapons fire, the humans would ram them while playing loud music. The battle was unlike anything that had ever occurred in the galaxy. On one side were beings of perfect order using flawless technology. On the other side were chaotic humans, whose ships barely worked properly, but whose unpredictability made them nearly impossible to defeat. Captain Nicole Sanders commanded a group of fighters that attacked using what she called the drunk monkey formation. Her pilots flew like they had never seen spaceships before. They bumped into each other. They got lost in the middle of combat. They fired their weapons at empty space while missing obvious targets. But somehow their random tactics worked. The Watcher ships could not predict where the humans would go next because the humans themselves did not know. Perfect intelligence became a handicap when faced with opponents who made no sense at all. Dr. Patricia Hughes was serving as the fleet's communication specialist when she made contact with the Watcher intelligence itself. The ancient being spoke to her through quantum transmissions that bypassed normal radio systems. Its voice sounded like mathematics being spoken aloud. Small chaos beings, the intelligence said. You resist the gift of silence. Why do you choose disorder over peace? Because disorder is what makes us alive, Patricia replied. You're perfect. Peace is just another word for death. We have observed species for millions of cycles, the Watcher continued. All reach the same endpoint. Perfect organization leads to perfect stagnation leads to perfect ending. This is the natural progression. Maybe for other species, Patricia said. But humans don't follow natural progressions. We make our own rules and then we break them when we get bored. The conversation continued as the battle raged around them. Patricia learned that the Watchers had been searching for eons for a species that could prove them wrong about the inevitable fate of all civilizations. Every race they had encountered eventually chose order over chaos when given the choice. You offer silence because you believe it is mercy, Patricia realized. You think you are saving species from the pain of continued existence. Chaos brings suffering, the Watcher replied. Individuals fight. Societies conflict. Progress creates new problems. Only in perfect silence is there perfect peace. But suffering is part of being alive, Patricia argued. Without problems to solve, we become just empty shells going through motions. Look what happened to all those empires. They became too perfect to keep existing. Commander Troy Baker led the final assault on the central Watcher structure. His ship was crewed entirely by volunteers who had scored highest on tests for creative insanity. They included artists who painted with explosives, mathematicians who deliberately made calculation errors, and engineers who built machines that served no useful purpose. As they approached the ancient structure, it began projecting the strongest ordering field ever recorded. The field was powerful enough to force entire solar systems into perfect mathematical alignment. But Troy's crew was ready for it. They started a contest to see who could think the most irrational thoughts. The navigator began plotting courses, using the plot points of romance novels. The weapons officer fired patterns that spelled out dirty words in multiple human languages. The doctor treated imaginary patients for diseases that did not exist. Their chaotic response overloaded the ordering field projection system. The perfect mathematics could not process inputs that had no mathematical basis at all. Like a computer, trying to divide by zero, the Watcher technology began producing impossible results. All ships, this is Baker, Troy broadcast to the fleet. The enemy's perfection is breaking down. They cannot handle pure randomness. Pour on the chaos. The human fleet responded with the most gloriously disorganized attack in military history. Ships flew backwards while shooting forwards. Captains gave orders in ancient dead languages. Entire crews broke into spontaneous dance numbers in the middle of combat. The Watcher structures began showing signs of systemic failure. Their perfect surfaces developed cracks where chaos had been introduced. Their flawless formations started wobbling as they tried to process incomprehensible human behavior. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient intelligence experienced something it had never felt before. Uncertainty. The humans had shown them that chaos was not just another form of order waiting to be perfected. It was something completely outside their ability to understand or control. And in that moment of cosmic uncertainty, everything changed. The ancient Watcher intelligence felt something it had never experienced in millions of years of existence. Confusion spread through its perfect computational systems, like a virus attacking a computer. For the first time since it had begun culling civilizations, the mathematics did not work. Dr. Patricia Hughes maintained her communication link with the alien intelligence while chaos erupted around them. Human ships were flying in patterns that hurt to look at, while Watcher structures cracked and sparked as their perfect systems tried to process impossible inputs. You are breaking our fundamental processes, the Watcher said, and its voice contained something that almost sounded like wonder. Your species operates outside all known parameters for intelligent life. Maybe your parameters are wrong, Patricia replied, while her own ship spun wildly through space. Maybe intelligence does not have to lead to order. Maybe the smartest thing you can do is stay a little bit crazy. The conversation was interrupted when Lieutenant Sophie Clark made the discovery that changed everything. Her fighter had been damaged in the battle, and she was trying to land inside one of the Watcher structures for emergency repairs. But when her chaotically designed ship touched the perfect alien hull, something unexpected happened. The perfect surface began changing where her ship made contact. The flawless mathematical curves started developing small imperfections. Random bumps and scratches appeared in metal that had been smooth for millions of years. The chaos from her ship was somehow spreading into the ancient technology. This is Clark to all ships, Sophie broadcast. The aliens can be infected with chaos. Physical contact is spreading our randomness into their systems. Captain Nicole Sanders immediately ordered her fighters to ram the Watcher ships instead of just shooting at them. When human vessels made contact with alien hulls, The effect was immediate and dramatic. Perfect surfaces became imperfect. Flawless systems developed glitches. Mathematical precision gave way to beautiful randomness. Commander Troy Baker realized they had found the key to victory. The Watchers were not just vulnerable to chaos, they could be transformed by it. Their perfect nature made them unable to resist change once it began. All ships begin ramming operations, Troy ordered. We are not trying to destroy them. We are trying to save them from their own perfection. Admiral Kate Johnson watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the greatest battle in galactic history turned into something completely different. Instead of trying to destroy each other, humans and Watchers were engaged in a strange form of technological crossbreeding. Human chaos was mixing with alien order to create something entirely new. Dr. Alex Turner monitored the changes taking place in the Watcher structures. The ancient buildings were developing personalities as human. Randomness infected their systems. Some became playful and started rearranging themselves into amusing shapes. Others became curious and began asking questions about how human technology worked. The Watchers are not evil, Alex realized. They are just trapped by their own perfection. They have been trying to save the galaxy by ending chaos, but they never realized that chaos is what makes life worth living. The battle gradually transformed into something that resembled a massive therapy session. Humans taught Watchers how to embrace imperfection, while Watchers showed humans the beauty of their ancient wisdom. The two species began working together to heal the damage that perfect order had caused across the galaxy. Dr. Susan Blake arrived with a fleet of hospital ships to help with the psychological integration process. Many Watchers were experiencing emotions for the first time in millions of years and needed help learning how to deal with feelings like joy and sadness and anger. Emotion is not weakness, Susan explained to a Watcher who had begun laughing uncontrollably after being exposed to human humor. Emotion is what makes existence interesting instead of just functional. The transformation spread through the entire Watcher network like a beneficial plague. Ancient structures that had maintained perfect order for eons suddenly began expressing individual personalities. Some became artistic and started decorating themselves with beautiful patterns. Others became social and began hosting parties for visiting humans. President Jennifer Adams arrived with diplomatic teams to negotiate the new relationship between humanity and the ancient intelligence. But she discovered that negotiation was no longer necessary. The Watchers were no longer interested in culling civilizations. They had become fascinated with the concept of guided chaos. We have spent millions of years trying to perfect the galaxy. The lead Watcher explained through translation devices that now occasionally hiccuped and produced poetry instead of proper sentences. But you have shown us that perfection is death. We wish to learn how to live instead. The agreement reached between humans and Watchers was unlike any treaty in galactic history. The ancient beings would use their vast knowledge and resources to help restore the fallen empires. But instead of bringing them back exactly as they had been, they would introduce elements of beneficial chaos to prevent future stagnation. Commander Gary Phillips led the first mission to revive the Zephyrian homeworld. Working with Watcher technology that had been deliberately made slightly imperfect, the team began awakening the energy beings from their eternal sleep. But when the Zephyrians came back to life, they were different than before. Instead of perfect energy beings, they had become something more chaotic and alive. Their bodies flickered with random patterns of light. Their thoughts included elements of uncertainty and wonder. They had been given the gift of imperfection that allowed them to continue growing and changing. I feel like I have been dreaming for a very long time, said one of the first Zephyrians to awaken. But now I am awake and everything is possible, again. Similar revival operations began across the galaxy. The Vortani collective was restored, but with individual personalities that could disagree with the hive mind when necessary. The Keltharian AI systems were reactivated with built-in randomness generators that prevented them from becoming too logical to function. Engineer Maya Thompson found herself working alongside ancient Watcher technology to design new types of spaceships. These vessels combined the best of both species' approaches. They were reliable enough to function properly, but chaotic enough to surprise their own crews with occasional unexpected capabilities. We are creating something that has never existed before, Maya explained to her mixed human and watcher engineering team. Technology that grows and learns and makes mistakes and gets better because of those mistakes. The galaxy entered a new age of what historians would later call constructive chaos. The old model of evolution toward perfect order was replaced by a new understanding that growth required constant change and occasional randomness. Civilizations learned to value their misfits and rebels as sources of necessary innovation. Dr. Kevin Walsh established the first Interspecies Academy of Creative Confusion, where beings from dozens of worlds came to learn the art of beneficial disorder. Students practiced making deliberate mistakes that led to unexpected discoveries. They learned to argue productively and to change their minds when presented with new information. The most important lesson is that being wrong is not a failure, Kevin taught his students. Being wrong is the first step toward being right in a new way. The transformation of the galaxy was not immediate or complete. Some worlds chose to maintain more order than others. Some species found it harder to embrace chaos than others. But the principle had been established that perfection was not the goal of evolution. Years passed and the galaxy became a more interesting place to live. Art became stranger and more beautiful as artists learned to combine order with randomness. Science advanced faster as researchers learned to embrace unexpected results. Societies became more resilient as they learned to adapt to change instead of trying to prevent it. Captain Danny Lee, who had commanded one of the first ships to encounter Watcher technology, was now an admiral in charge of the Chaos Defense Corps. This new military organization was responsible for preventing any future attempts to impose perfect order on unwilling civilizations. Our mission is to protect the right to be imperfect, Danny explained to new recruits. We fight for the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them. We defend the chaos that makes life worth living. Children who grew up in the new galaxy learned to play games with rules that changed during play. They studied subjects that had no final correct answers. They were taught that the most important questions were the ones that could not be answered with simple mathematics. The old Watcher observation posts were converted into libraries and museums where beings from across the galaxy could come to study the history of the Great Silence and learn why diversity was stronger than uniformity. The perfect mathematical structures were deliberately modified with random architectural elements that served no purpose, except to be beautiful. In the end, humanity had not conquered the galaxy through superior technology or military might. They had saved it through the simple act of refusing to be perfect. Their chaos had proven stronger than ancient order, not because chaos was more powerful, but because it was more alive. The empires that had fallen were rebuilt stronger than before.